Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paloma Hill. Thank you for making time in what I know are your very busy schedules to join us for our digital PSAT webinar. We are excited to share information about the changes and what it means for you, your students, and educators. So today, just to kind of preview what we will be discussing, our agenda for this webinar will be diving into what changes are going to be for the PSAT, what's being revamped, the time, structure, question changes, scoring, and how this impacts students. And then we're also going to talk about PSAT questions and content, offer some tips and tricks for your students, and how we here can support you. I am thrilled to introduce our presenters and myself. So as I said, my name is Paloma Hill, and I am the Director of Customer Success for K-12 Test Prep here at the Princeton Review. I have been with the company for 8 years, and I'm super excited to be your moderator and will be the presentation clicker this afternoon. I will also be monitoring our chat, so please feel free to use the chat to ask any questions you may have. Our incredible presenters today are Marcy Skanesny, who is our Customer Success Manager for K-12 Educational Partnerships, and she is joined today by Denisha Brown, who is also a fellow Customer Success Manager. Our team works with outstanding partners in school districts to support all students and educators to provide test prep for their college readiness journeys. We are thankful that you're all here today. So we will dive right into it.
Thanks, Paloma. So our first topic this evening will be the focus on what the difference is between the PSAT you may be familiar with and the new digital PSAT. So let's dig in a little bit more to what the changes actually mean. The PSAT, NMSQT, and the PSAT 8-9 are being offered digitally in the fall of 2023 so that students who will be taking the SAT in the spring of 2024 have an opportunity to familiarize themselves with the digital testing experience before taking on the digital SAT. Students will be taking the test on a computer and there will be no more need for Scantrons. That's what was most talked about when the change was announced by the College Board, and rightfully so. But we need to understand that what it means when we say PSAT is now a digital test. Most significantly, the PSAT is going digital, but not online. That's a subtle but very important difference. In the wake of the coronavirus pandemic, and especially the remote learning caused by the pandemic, the College Board expressed interest in making an online PSAT, and they even held online AP placement or AP testing in May 2020. That did not go well, to say the least. The proctoring was difficult. Students with internet issues could not submit their exams, and there was general confusion about the changes to the exams. For a 2-month emergency switch to online testing, though, it worked well enough. But to be clear, the College Board would have difficulty making an online PSAT. Almost 2 years later, the College Board has finally announced plans for a computer-based PSAT. This new PSAT operates from a custom-built digital exam application made by the College Board for the specific purpose of offering a computer test. When you begin thinking about what you will face in a digital PSAT, know exactly what the custom application was built to do. Let's get an overview of the digital testing rollout. As you can see here, the rollout has been staggered. In the spring of 2023, the College Board rolled out the digital SAT for international students, but still used paper and pencil for PSAT students and for SAT students in the US. Then in the fall of this year, they'll be continuing the digital SAT for international students and adding the digital PSAT for all students, while continuing the paper and pencil SAT for US students. In the spring is when we see all of the tests going fully digital for all students. This fall will be the first digital PSAT experience for all students, and your school has picked a testing date in October to administer the test. It can be any time between October 2nd and October 31st. This will vary by school and by district, so please be sure to check in with your teachers and your counselors as you prepare for your test. This is a different from years past as well.
Online practice tests have been around for years, even from the College Board itself. So, since 2020, College Board has been adapting its college readiness exams to accommodate the new needs of a more digital age. It could do this because graduate exams like the GRE, GMAT, MCAT, and LSAT, which are used as tests for graduate medical and law school admissions, have offered students opportunities to take computer based tests for quite some time now. As a result, the College Board created a custom built digital exam application for a few key reasons. The first, students can take the digital PSAT on a laptop or a tablet. The College Board has made the exam application so it will be able to work on both. A computer is not a necessity for students to take the exam. This provides an ability for many more students to take the PSAT and shows that the College Board wants to make the test more accessible for students to take the digital PSAT. That is also why the College Board says the digital PSAT can be taken on a student's device or one provided by their school. And it can even be taken on one borrowed from the College Board themselves. The College Board is allowing students to use a device they're familiar with to make them more comfortable on test day. But they also are making sure not having a laptop or a tablet does not prevent students from taking the test. Most importantly, and probably the best aspect for students, is that the digital PSAT will not end if a student has internet issues. So the College Board promises that they will receive scores from students even if the internet cuts out halfway through an exam. The digital PSAT will keep going without internet access. So once a student starts the exam, they will be able to continue. In fact, if a student loses power on their device, the College Board is saying that a student can simply plug back in and pick up where they left off. But taking the test on a laptop or a computer or a tablet isn't the only way that the PSAT is changing. They have also streamlined the PSAT. So, another important change is that the PSAT is now almost identical to the SAT in timing and in format. So, while you may see a few more advanced math topics when it comes to the SAT, other than a score range, the tests are now more aligned. The digital PSAT will be streamlined as the new test. So, most significantly, the PSAT will become a 2 hour and 14-minute test instead of a 3 hour test. This is huge. The time students will be sitting in a testing site taking the exam is reduced by almost a third. So, taking the SAT or the PSAT will take much less time in a student's day, especially because many of the administrative aspects will be done ahead of time. This will also make PSAT school days a little less disruptive to school schedules. Reducing the time is an unqualified win for students. Compared to a more than 3 hour test, just over 2 hour, a just over 2 hour test will have shorter sections, fewer overall questions, and a reduced testing fatigue. So those are all huge challenges that are less daunting on the new digital PSAT. At the Princeton Review, our prep programs are based on full length practice tests. It's a key reason for that is that we know students are often struggling with just making it through every question and maintaining focus for multiple hours. A shorter test helps with that particular testing challenge. Also, as we mentioned, computer adaptive tests are nothing new. So, While they come in a few different varieties, all computer adaptive tests present different questions to different students based on the individual student's performance. This is why the College Board broke down each section into 2 modules. How students perform on the first module will determine what questions students see in the second module. So here's how that actually works in practice. If a student does well or misses less questions, the second module for that section will be mostly hard questions. If a student does poorly or misses more questions, the second module for that section will be mostly easy questions. Here's what makes that process so tricky. If you really take this test and move through the modules, you can't know how well you did on the first module based on the questions you get in the second module. Notice all of those say mostly on their difficulty levels. That's because the College Board itself says that the second module will be higher difficulty or lower difficulty questions on average. You're likely to see easy questions in the second module, even if you did really well on the first module. And what is difficult or easy for one student may be more difficult or easier for other test takers. You just can't tell how you've done based on what questions you'll see. I like to say it's like the stairs at Hogwarts. You know it's going to move, but it's hard to tell where. A computer adaptive test is what allows College Board to streamline their PSAT. A computer adaptive test can also show more differentiation between students with fewer questions because students get sorted mid-test.
So far, we've talked a little bit about the differences in the timing and in the format of the digital PSAT. However, that's not all that's changing. The College Board has also adjusted some of the question types as well as the content you will see on the tests going forward. So let's take a look at how. In the past, the PSAT has had 3 main testing sections: reading questions, writing questions, and math questions. The digital PSAT has combined the reading and writing sections into just one section. When you sit down for the digital PSAT, you'll have just 2 sections, reading and writing, and a math section. This summer, the College Board revealed the exact specifications on each section. The reading and writing section will be divided into 2 modules. Each module will have 25 operational questions, meaning those that you'll be scored on, and 2 pre-test questions, which are essentially experimental questions on the testing application, which won't be scored. All of the reading and writing questions are multiple choice questions, with every question having just one short passage. You will have 32 minutes to answer all of the questions in each of the reading and writing modules. For the math section, you will also see 2 modules. In each one, you'll have 20 operational questions and again 2 pre-test questions. The math section will have 75% multiple choice and 25% student-produced responses, which are usually called grid-in responses. They're just not choices that have a bubble for you to fill out. You will have 35 minutes to answer all of the questions in each of the math modules as well. You may look at this chart and wonder why the sections are divided into modules. Why don't we take just one 64-minute, 50-question reading and writing section and then just one 70-minute, 40-question math section? Well, there's a simple reason, and it all goes back to the fact that the PSAT is becoming computer adaptive. So your performance in the first of these modules will determine, as Denisha said, the questions that you see on the second modules. The content on the new digital PSAT is similar to what we've seen on the traditional test. The main difference here is that the questions are formatted a bit differently. The reading and writing modules will feature much shorter reading passages, which will be easier and faster for you to read and analyze. And the math modules will have questions that are more straightforward and more concise.
So, while there are some substantial changes coming to the new test, there will be some universal and commonly used tips and tricks that students can learn to help them get through and get their best scores. Before we discuss the strategies in individual questions, we should talk about an overall strategy for the test. We have lots of general test taking strategies that we teach at the Princeton Review for the PSAT, but also for the SAT and ACT, AP exams, and other computer adaptive tests like the LSAT, GMAT, and GRE. One of the strategies that we teach in our course is called letter of the day. A blank answer is a wrong answer. So on both the PSAT and the SAT, that means you should never leave an answer choice blank. Even if you're making a completely random guess, please put something down. And you will be much more successful as a student if you know how to guess the right way. Uh, I have shown two different approaches for random guesses here on the screen. Students often waste time by trying to guess right, even if they have no idea what the question is, or if they don't have the time to complete every question. So, I'd like you to put in the chat what you think would get the higher scores, straight down one column or mixing it up. So, many students would guess mixing it up, but it's actually the first strategy. So, with 10 questions, it's a little harder to see, but with many questions, you should be able to use the approach on the left. This is what we call choosing a letter of the day. When you sit down for the PSAT or the SAT, always pick a letter, A, B, C, or D. And that's what you will guess when you don't know the answer or when you've run out of time. The letter of the day works for two reasons. The first, it saves time. You won't have to spend precious minutes deciding which random guess you will make. The second advantage is a bit sneakier. If your letter of the day is D and you choose D again and again over the whole test, you have a 25% chance that the correct answer will be D on any given question. The chance of guessing correctly decreases when you use varied responses. So, by using a letter of the day, you're essentially locking in that 25% chance at those correct answers. Before you start practicing on individual sections or question types, this is the kind of overall strategy that you need to maximize your success on the PSAT, the SAT, or both. You can also use process of elimination to rule out any answer choices that are wrong. And there are certain ways reading questions are phrased that you should look out for. So, of course, there's a lot more to breaking down the reading comprehension questions, but any answer choice that uses extreme language like never, always, and all is probably the wrong answer. You should also be wary of answer choices that use phrases directly from the reading provided. So remember, the PSAT and the SAT want to trick you as a student. And when you identify an exact phrase from a passage in the answer choice, you might think it's right. And in fact, that's usually why they choose it as a trap. Just because it's in the passage does not mean it's an answer to the question they are asking. You should also rule out anything that could be true but isn't explicitly stated in the text provided. The PSAT and the SAT clearly note that you do not need outside information or outside knowledge to answer reading questions. So if it isn't in the passage, it cannot be a correct answer. But lastly, and most importantly, remember about the reading passages is that the answer you want might not be there, right? So multiple choice answers often are not customizable features. You have to select from what's on the rack. So you might not find the answer choice that you absolutely love, but it's still the best answer, or at least it's the least bad answer. And that's likely your correct choice.
One of the great things about the PSAT is that students who do well on it have a chance at winning a scholarship, specifically the National Merit Scholarship. But it's important to know that your PSAT component scores will not determine your national merit qualification, nor will even your composite score. Instead, it follows this formula. Your national merit scholarship qualifying score is calculated by adding your reading and writing test score plus your math score. Take the sum of those two scores and then multiply that by 2. Whether you are a national merit qualifier or not is dependent upon that final number, which is known as the National Merit Selection Index. Only the top 1% of scorers in each state are national merit qualifiers. So if you want to have a chance for the National Merit Scholarship, you must be in the top 1% of all test takers by this metric. Your test scores will be compared with other test takers in your state, and you must score in the top 1% of your state, not overall. That means that very, very few students receive national merit recognition. According to the National Merit Scholarship Corporation's own website, only 1.6 million roughly 1.6 million juniors will take the PSAT each year. So a large group are taking it. From that group, just 50,000 are recognized scholars. Note that this is merely recognized. This is not an actual scholarship winner. That gets further narrowed down to just 16,000 national merit semifinalists, and then only 15,000 students are named finalists. Finalists are the people who actually receive the $2,500 scholarship. Very few students are actually getting the National Merit Scholarship, as you can see by the graphic. The PSAT is a scholarship qualification exam, but it's best not to think about it as a chance at a scholarship. You really should think more about it as a great test run of what you will see on your SAT. And that's why the digital version of the test can be so helpful for students, as it closely mirrors the digital SAT. And so you need to know about the strategies for the PSAT that you can take straight into preparing for the SAT.
So, what is most important to us is how we can help support you and your students on their journey to your dream college. The digital PSAT has a lot of great features and, like we said earlier, is changing quite a bit. But we want to leave you with a few things to remember. The first of which is that the digital PSAT will have a built-in Desmos calculator, which students have used in our classes for several years now. They can also use an approved personal calculator. So students will be able to use a calculator on all of the math questions. It's important for them to learn when the calculator will be useful and when it's not. Each student will also have a visible timer within their digital test, so students can learn very effective strategies for pacing and timing for each module. Students also receive a heads up notification when they have 5 minutes left in each module. As a traditional, as in the traditional paper and pencil tests, students will not be penalized for incorrect answers. Again, that means they will only be awarded points for correct answers. And students should answer or at least guess at every single question. Students in the Princeton Review courses will become familiar with the new format of the test and learn to understand how the test works through each module. New features in the digital PSAT include the ability to flag questions for review if you have time at the end, make notes on your test, and mark out choices to eliminate wrong answers directly on the screen, which students can find very helpful. And lastly, the last thing I want you to make sure you remember is even though the test is digital, students will be provided with scratch paper when they take the test. So it's important to learn how and when to use scratch paper effectively instead of keeping it all in your. The Princeton Review has been preparing for the digital PSAT since the College Board made their announcement. And the test format may be new, but we're using our 42 years of test prep experience to support students as they adjust to the new format and apply brand new strategies. Whether you participate in any of our courses or with a tutor through the Tutor.com platform, where you can get online tutoring 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, as well as academic tutoring for test prep and regular academic support. We are here to assist you on your college journey. We hope that this information that you've received this afternoon will be super helpful as you and your students prepare for the test. And we're excited to see how all of our students perform in October.
And that concludes our webinar. Thank you so much to our presenters, Denisha and Marcy, as well as you attendees for being here and learning about the changes to the PSAT. We have a bit of time left for questions, so please feel free to add them in the chat. You're also welcome to send them directly to us at the contact information below, and we'll be happy to answer. If you have any questions or would like to reach out or be included in any of our other webinars, please feel free to reach out and let us know. Thank you so much for being here and attending with us.
I do see Sheila's question in the chat, asking if slides will be available. While we will not be sending out slides, we will be sending out links to this presentation so that you can refer back to this. Oh, Yvonne has another really great question, which is when will test scores be released? So with the digital format, it's really helpful because students no longer have to wait as long to receive their test scores. They become available a lot sooner. Marcy, do you want to speak a bit more to that?
Sure, absolutely. So traditionally with the paper and pencil test, you're waiting a matter of weeks, sometimes even over a month for your test scores to come back. But with the digital format, students will receive their scores within just a couple of days after completing their test. So we're not able to give you a specific date when you'll receive your scores. That depends upon when your school and your school district schedules the test in between the dates in October.
So the PSAT National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test is for 11th graders. However, there are several other versions of the PSAT that can be used for 8th, 9th, and 10th graders.
We do have another question on the digital PSAT. Will question difficulty change based on whether you get a series of questions right within a module, or is it where the score on one affects the difficulty of another? Ladies?
So because it's adaptive by module, they are taking the overall number of questions into account. So whether a student does several questions in a row right or correctly or not, does not necessarily affect the test. It will affect how they do overall within said module. So it's looking at the entire range. So if a student has a string of bad questions or of incorrect answers, but does mostly well on a module, they will still get the more difficult version of the test. Just like if they have a string of correct answers, but do poorly on the overall module, they will still see the mostly easy section.
And we have another question. Will students taking the PSAT on September 23rd be digital? Will the digital be available then? Sheila, I would suggest that you reach out to the testing coordinator on your campus. It's my understanding that all of the PSATs for fall will be digital, but it's also my understanding that those will be taken in October. So if you'll be taking the PSAT at a different time, definitely check in with your campus to find out which format will be used.
And I believe, Sheila, I recognize you. Um, so that is one of the practice tests, and we can talk about a little more about that online, but we can make sure the digital version is available.
Yvonne asks, when a student does request a lending device, is it sent via email or what is the process? So those loaner devices will come directly from the College Board, and there is a link on their website to request that. It does have to be completed a substantial period of time ahead of time. So I would, if you're taking the test in October, I would start looking at that now, especially to allow for any glitches that might happen with the first administration of the test. Always a good idea to leave extra time for yourself. And then we have a question. I struggle with reading and writing. How can I improve for the PSAT? So the PSAT is going to cover material that you have learned in your classes at school. The best way to improve those skills is simply just to keep practicing them. We do have free practice tests online at our website. You can log on and take a free practice digital PSAT to see how you might do. And then also if you have tutoring available in your school or tutoring available through the Princeton Review and Tutor.com online, those would be great ways to log on and improve some of those skills as well.
I see
And
another great question, which is, do students keep going through the modules, or are they all starting and stopping at the same time? So the way the digital PSAT is designed, it is designed that you have to finish the entire time for the module before you are able to move on. So we know that students may have various times in which they're logging on, but they should be all starting the test relatively around the same time. The students cannot skip ahead even if they finish their module before the time finishes. So they will have to wait until the entire timing for their module finishes before they're able to move on to the next module.
Well, thank you so much again, Denisha and Marcy, and all the participants. Unless there are any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us if you have any other questions. And I believe a recording will be available later on, which we will follow up via email as well. Thank you again so much for your time and being here with us today, and we hope you have a great rest of your week.